I'm going to do a preface to this video. Before I made this video, I sat down with the customer and had a discussion with him about open and closed loop before he drove his JK back to Colorado. He drove it back to Colorado and kept an eye on the scan gauge, which indicated whether or not he was in open or closed loop. He got 16.9 miles to the gallon on his trip home, and that included the high altitude roads up in Colorado. That was several miles to the gallon better than he used to get before he started monitoring open and closed loop.
We're going to talk a little bit about open loop versus closed loop because there's a lot of misunderstanding about this, and you can actually improve your gas mileage by monitoring this, not just in an LS. This applies to Hemis or Chrysler engines, whatever. There's two basic kind of O2 sensors, and we're not going to get too far into it, but just know that a narrowband O2 sensor can really only sense stoichiometric, which is 1 point on the scale. That's going to be when the oxygen content in the exhaust is about 1.5%. A wideband O2 sensor can actually sense air-fuel ratio. Usually wideband sensors can go from about 8 to 1 to about 20 to 1. For engine performance, the lower the number, 11 to 1, 12 to 1 is better. For economy, the higher the number, let's say 16, 17 to 1 would be better. But we're stuck with stoichiometric. Stoichiometric is what the feds determined was the best air-fuel ratio for the combination of performance and economy. Pure gasoline's about 14.7 to 1 air to fuel. Alcohol's about 9 to 1, and if you have alcohol in your fuel, then that number starts to change. So if you're at 14.7, you might be at 14.2, which is pretty much what we're here in Nevada. What we have here in this Aeroforce gauge is a couple of parameters. Top one is engine load, bottom one is fuel status. The CL is very important. CL means that we're in closed loop. What that means is we're running off the O2 sensor. The O2 sensors switch around stoichiometric, which means stoichiometric is about 0.450 volts or 450 millivolts. Anything above that is rich, anything below that is lean. So what happens is if you're above 0.450 or 450 millivolts, the operating systems know that you're running rich or above stoichiometric. So then it pulls back the injector pulse width and brings it down. You drop below 0.450 millivolts. Now you're lean. The operating system knows that. So now it commands a rich command. And this is what ends up in the switching of the O2 sensor around stoichiometric, up and down, up and down. That is in closed loop operation, and that's what this is indicating right here. Right now our engine load is low because we're idling. We do have the air conditioner on. So in a perfect world, we would like to be in closed loop all the time and run at stoich. Or, even better yet, run lean burn or lean cruise, which means we're going to be running leaner than 14.7 or stoich, which can actually give you better economy, but there's downsides to that for emissions, NOx emissions. The feds have actually made lean cruise illegal here in North America. So this CL or closed loop is important because it's telling you that I am running off the O2, the narrowband O2, in a closed loop mode. If you look at the parameter above it, that's the calculated engine load. And this is a heavy JK. Now I just accelerated and we're going to start cruising. You're going to see that number start to come down. We got 40s in this JK. It's lifted up with a long arm, I think a 6-inch lift, a lot of aerodynamic drag. And here's my point. When we get on the highway with this JK, we're going to be fighting a lot of forces, aerodynamic forces, frictional forces, weight. We've got a lot of inertia. So this little 6.0 liter LS engine has to push all that down the road at 70, 80 miles an hour. And here's what can happen. There's several different open loop modes. As we mentioned one already, lean cruise, which is no longer available to us. The operating system will switch out of closed loop. It won't look at the O2s for fuel control. It will check the O2s periodically, but basically those O2s are going to flatline lean because we're going to be running 16, 17, 18 to 1 air fuel ratio. This was really popular back in the 80s and the early 90s with the lean burn engines. Another open loop mode is going to be cold start. When you first start the engine, we have to put some extra fuel into it to warm things up. So that's a cold start mode, and we're not going to talk too much about that because there's really not a lot to do with drivability. When you let the gas off, that's deceleration fuel cutoff, or DFCO. DFCO means basically that. When you let the gas off and you're coasting, it can shut the injectors off and stop the fuel flow to the engine. And that's pretty important because back in the day with carburetors, we couldn't do that because we had high intake manifold vacuum when we were decelerating. So it would pull fuel through the transfer ports, and that fuel was just basically wasted. So by being able to shut the fuel off during deceleration, that's definitely helping our economy. Now here's probably the mode that we want to talk about the most, and that's performance enrichment. Performance enrichment is basically when you put your engine under a load where you may kick out of the closed loop mode, get away from stoichiometric, and drop down a couple of points, down to 13 to 1, 12 to 1, And by richening up the air-fuel ratio, it lets us put more power out. And there's several reasons we want to do that. One, you're hauling a heavy load. You got a heavy pig of a JK going up a hill at 80 miles an hour. So we need that extra power to do what we want to do. Two is going to be protection. We can't run an engine lean under a heavy load or you're going to start breaking stuff, burning stuff, whatever. So performance enrichment is also a safety mode. Now, if you're running a quarter-mile car or around a racetrack, you don't really care too much about fuel economy. You're probably not even running a narrowband O2 sensor. You might be running a wideband so you can see what air-fuel ratio you're running, but we're not really too concerned about stoichiometric at that point. So you can see we're going to get in the engine here, which means in this heavy JK, we're pushing 800 pounds of tires. You're going to see this engine load hit 80-90%, maybe even higher. I'm just driving pretty normal. I do have the air conditioning on. It is a pretty warm day. You can see we're at 80-85%. Now this 6-liter, as you can see, has no problem getting this JK up to speed. But notice that we're open loop right now. What that means is the operating system has stopped looking at the O2 sensors and is just dumping fuel to get us up to speed. Now that we're up to speed and the load is coming off, you can see that we're in closed loop again. Now I'm going to set the cruise control here at 75. So now we're in cruise. So you can see that the load is changing based on the elevation, wind, etc. Now, tire pressure has a lot to do with this. If you're driving 40s at 15 pounds on the highway, that's a lot of drag. This Jeep has a 4 to 6 inch lift, a lot more drag. Now this little engine's got to push that. You can see that we're staying in closed. Well, we just went into open loop. We're right between that fine line of open loop and closed loop because we're starting to go up a little grade here. Now, if I were to back off the cruise control 1 mile an hour, bam, we're right back into closed loop and we're switching off the O2s. Our economy has just improved dramatically by doing that. Now here's another thing. When the engine downshifts, it can put the engine into its power band and kick you back into closed loop. It's kind of a fine line, and one of the reasons that Gen 5s can get better economy is because they can control the cylinder pressure better, so they can keep that engine in its optimal operating zone and therefore stay in closed loop longer. Now I'm staying in closed loop right now, going up this slight grade, but I do predict as soon as we hit the smallest hill, we're going to kick back into open loop. And the reality is this is a 6,000 plus pound JK. We're pushing 800 to 1,000 pounds of wheels and tires. We're lifted up 4 to 6 inches with a lot of drag. So this little 6.0 is doing what it should be doing. If we had a 6.2 liter engine or a supercharged engine, we might be able to stay in closed loop longer. Now I'm going up this grade, and you can see that we did kick back into open loop. And you ask, why am I telling you all this? Well, a lot of you guys are concerned about economy on the highway. And the reality is, just by backing off a mile per hour or two, you can stay in closed loop and increase your mileage significantly. Now you can see we're back in closed loop. We're going the same speed. Our load has dropped off significantly because we're on level ground. Manufacturers used all sorts of gizmos to tell you about economy, little green lights that would light up. But the bottom line is, once you go from closed loop to open loop, you're starting to use gas. Now, if you're going up a really steep grade like the Baker grade in California with a really heavy JK, it's a hot day, you got low tire pressure, your air conditioning is on, just stay in open loop. It's going to be the safest thing for the engine. You're going to get up the hill at the speed you want to go up, etc. But if you're cruising down the highway just on the border of open loop and closed loop, it's really easy to just slow down a little bit, kick it back into closed loop, and then enjoy the benefits of that extra economy. So what I suggest you do, it doesn't really matter if you're running a scan gauge like this Aeroforce Interceptor, or if you're using a Bluetooth adapter with an app, or even a full-blown scanner. Just get something that will indicate the difference between closed loop and open loop, and you can save yourself a lot of money in fuel. I'm going to show you some of these O2 waveforms now. Alright, so check this out. You can see we were just open loop by looking at those two middle columns. Now you see the O2 sensor is switching, but we're actually going up a hill right now. So they start switching scratchy and then they kick into open loop. You can see us going between open and closed loop by watching those O2 feedback. You can see our miles per gallon going down as we go up this hill. You can see our air-fuel ratio has been commanded below 14 to 1. So we just crested the rise. Our O2s went lean. Air-fuel ratio went back up. Miles per gallon's going up. See, our O2s are starting to switch normal now. Now I'm going to give it some throttle to pick up some speed. See, our AFR went down. We're in open loop. Flatline the O2s. And we are going up this relatively steep grade, maybe 7%. I know with the stock JK it downshifts into second gear with a 4-speed on this hill. So you can see that we're completely flatlined. Air failure ratio has been backed off into the 12s. Miles per gallon's going down. We're holding our speed at about 75. Now let's see what happens when we crest this grade. I'm going to set cruise so I won't have any input. Flatlined rich. Air fuel ratio is low. Cresting the bridge. There you go, we're back into open loop. I mean closed loop. O2s are switching. We're maintaining our speed. And our economy's coming back up. Now here's something you can do for economy. You can see that we're in closed loop right now, running off the O2s. If I were to speed up, which I'm doing right now, notice we went open loop. So the moral of the story here is if you want economy, watch what mode you're operating in, closed loop or open loop. It's very easy to pick up economy by driving consciously. So the point I'm trying to make is monitor what mode you're running in. Performance enrichment, deceleration fuel cutoff, open loop, closed loop. This can get you better economy. There's no reason on some of these long stretches, if you just slow down 1 or 2 miles an hour, you can't get better economy. Take advantage of that. Back in the 1980s and 90s, when closed loop feedback oxygen sensor systems were getting installed in virtually all vehicles, I did a lot of experimenting. I experimented a lot with lane crews, and I was getting economy well over 20 miles to the gallon in older Camaros with 300 and 400 horsepower V8s. And you can do that by monitoring what's going on. Now guys, here's a perfect world scenario. We're cruising flat and level. You can see our economy's coming up. Our air fuel ratio is right at stoichiometric. Our O2s are switching pretty good. We're holding the speed that we want to hold. This is where you want to be. Now here's where I'm going with this. By just dropping 1 or 2 miles an hour, you might be able to kick yourself from open loop into closed loop. Not knowing when you're in open loop means that you don't know how to react to that. So that's what this video is about. Monitor your open versus closed loop. If you find that you're dumping fuel, just back off a little bit. Your economy's going to improve dramatically. Now we're going to try to catch deceleration fuel cutoff. Here we go. As you can see, the injectors are shut off. We flatlined to 0 volts, which is lean, and you can see our economy coming up. Now, after I slow down, it's going to have to keep the engine running, so you're going to see those injectors kick back in. There you go. We're going to get back on the freeway. Now, getting on the freeway, I'm going to need to throttle it. So we're going to go open loop, 12.3 to 1. And we're going up a grade. But you can see we're not having any issue with this little 6-liter pushing this Jeep. We're flatlined rich. Economy's going to start going down. Alright, we set our cruise control. We are in open loop because we are going up this grade. As soon as we get over this grade, you're going to see that we're going to go back into closed loop. Now, I'm going to drop the speed just a little bit. Look at this, just 2 miles an hour. And we went back into closed loop. We'll be coming back soon with a new video.